Good afternoon, and welcome to our first episode of Between My Therapist and I. My name is Yella Lee Smith. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and today we are going to be talking about goals, setting, and completing them. The first thing that we're going to talk about is defining what a goal is. I'm going to share a little bit of my own personal experience. I'm going to also give you some of the clinical insight that I've learned over the years. And then we're going to move on to talking about objectives. And finally, we're going to discuss what are some psychological, sometimes social, and environmental obstacles that keep people from actually accomplishing their objectives and meeting their goals. So, jumping right into kind of my personal experience. So, when I was about 23, 24 years old, I had my daughter. And now, mind you, this was 9 years ago. And I gained a lot of weight with the pregnancy. Ever since I gained the weight for 8 years straight, that became my goal, was to lose the weight. So I had this goal to get back to my prior to baby body. And I remember that there were so many things that I set, prepared, and planned around that goal. I tried to measure it. I tried to keep track of it. There was just so many things, and I kept constantly failing. I mean, 8 years of failed attempts over and over again. And I think the main reason, looking back, why I continuously failed was because I refused to acknowledge to myself that I wasn't ready to commit to what it took to lose that kind of weight. I was limited in my understanding and my knowledge of weight management, so I didn't know a whole lot about like macros and like just weight in general and exercising. I had always just been thin my whole life. As my partner says, I'm genetically gifted, so I really didn't have to know a whole lot, and it was a big obstacle for me because I was very ignorant. And then on top of that, there was the fact that I just didn't really feel committed to it. Now, what I was committed to was the fact that, I didn't like that society judged me for my weight. I didn't like that my partner judged me for my weight. I didn't like the way I looked in my clothes. I didn't like the way I looked in the mirror. So the reason why I was setting those goals to lose weight was not because of me, and it was not because I was committed. It was because I had all of these outside sources weighing in on my decision, and I wanted to kind of placate them. I wanted them to shut up. So I would make the effort, fail at the effort. I would lie. I would cheat when, have cheat meals. I would reward myself when I didn't need to be rewarding myself because I really wasn't meeting my objectives. I would just do a lot of really negative things. And honestly, over the time that it took for me to get to the point where I'm at now, in those 8 years, I suffered in terms of my relationships, suffered, my relationship with food suffered. I began to resent my partner. I resented my family. I resented society. I I even I was angry. I was frustrated. Um, I developed a really unhealthy relationship with food because I would eat something that I knew wasn't good for me or wasn't healthy for me, and then I would turn around and try to find reasons why it was okay for me to do it. And then when I couldn't find a reason, I would feel guilty, and then I would feel ashamed, and I would feel angry. And, so it really cycled through a lot of negative patterns. And it really didn't make a difference. The goals were still not being met. I was continuously disappointing my partner because I was setting expectations that really were not realistic. I was telling, I would show him that I was making an effort when I really wasn't. And I really had no intentions to. But I just really wasn't being honest with myself. So a year ago, or about a year ago, I had a situation where, unbeknownst to me, I had a health condition that I found out about. I had had the health condition for probably 3 or 4 years, according to the doctors, but I was not aware. And it wasn't making me obese, but it was being affected by my weight. And I just didn't realize it. So I find out just by chance a year ago, and I find out that the condition, not only can it affect my health, but it can even affect my cognitive functioning. So my ability to think and process and, do my job, do the thing that I love the most in the whole world. And my whole life changed. My whole entire perspective on goals and goal setting and just my weight and my health and everything completely changed. And that's what has led me to where I am now. 30 pounds lighter, constantly still working on myself and happy to do it, and really motivated, and just I love it. I don't ever want to stop working on myself. I see myself kind of falling behind a little bit sometimes, and I'm like, come on, get back out there. And I'm constantly pushing and pushing, and I love the push. And in my journey for the last year, I've taken some very vital steps that I want to share with you guys, and that I've shared with my patients, that I learned along the way, and that I already had a notion of before as a therapist, but I was not really putting into practice in my own daily life. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is goals. And I think something that people may not realize is that when you think of a goal, it is the final outcome. It's not exactly the thing that you work on. That is the result of the work. That is the goal. The goal is the result of the work. So for me, for example, my goal all the time was I want to lose weight, or I want to fit in these jeans, or I want to I want to be able to eat this food, or whatever. I didn't realize that what I was doing, I was setting objectives. I was not setting goals, because what happened was, a year ago, when my perspective completely changed and my mindset completely changed, was I realized when you're setting a goal and you're thinking of a goal, that is the final outcome, which for me became, I want to be the healthiest I possibly can. I want to be as healthy cognitively and physically as I possibly can. I want to aspire to have the cleanest bill of health I possibly can, so that I can continue to work and I can continue to take care of my daughter and my partner and my family and be there for them. That became the goal. And it didn't have to be super specific, because I had a vision in my mind and it was very clear of what accomplishing that goal looked like. Now, whenever you set a goal, learn my lesson. Just learn from what I'm sharing with you right now and save yourself the trouble. Do not bother setting goals that are not true to you, that are not something that is, I say, something that keeps you up at night. When you set a goal, you have to think about it as the final outcome, and you have to think about it as something that is so important to you, something that you're so hungry to have. You need it in your life so bad that it keeps you up at night. For me, it was I had to be healthy again. I had to do it. And I would think about not being healthy, and I would think about not being able to do my job, and it terrified me. And I needed that fear to push me through all of the obstacles that came along the way. So when you set the goal, be mindful that you're thinking about the final outcome, the final reward. What is the thing that you're looking to do? Now, when we talk about objectives, the objectives are the stepping stones to get to the final goal. And the goal sits there, and you check on it periodically, and you remind yourself, and you visualize your goal. You visualize yourself there, accomplishing what you want, accomplishing the results that you're looking for. Periodically, you do you can do a vision board of it, or you can have a picture of what you're aspiring to have, and that you can refer to, and you check on it periodically. Is this still my goal? Am I still this passionate? But the objectives are the work that you do on a day-to-day basis. So when we think of objectives, I want you to focus on stepping stones, and I want you to focus on tiny, very, very tiny micro stepping stones. So for someone like me, for example, who really, really struggled with emotional eating, one of the stepping stones, so one of my objectives had to be, I want to figure out how do my emotions relate to my food. So that was an objective. I wanted to figure out how do my emotions kind of affect my mood. And the way that I dealt with that objective was I got a journal, and I would, on days that I felt really good, I would write down what I ate. And on days that I felt really bad, I would write down what I ate. And for about a month, and I you don't have to do it for this long, but I did it for a month because of the fact that I wanted to catch all the fluctuations of emotion, including my cycle, which makes a big difference. And so I tracked it for a month, and that's all I focused on for a month. I didn't change anything. I didn't do anything different. I just focused on getting to know myself and my purpose. So that was my objective. By the end of the month, I had a pretty clear idea of what types of food made me feel a certain way and what I craved when I felt a certain way. So I saw that during my cycle, for example, I craved a lot of sugary, carbohydrates type of foods. And so I made a note of that. I noticed that whenever I felt really sad, I would crave foods that were warm and comforting. I noticed that when I was really happy, I craved sugary sweets, chocolate, things like that. So I started to keep track of that just for that 1 month, and I took a look at it, and I noticed pretty clearly that my emotions were really closely tied to my eating habits, and that overall I wasn't a bad eater. It wasn't like my diet was outrageous, but I was all over the place. So I didn't have a lot of organization in my food. Some days I would eat a lot. Some days I wouldn't eat at all, hardly anything. Some days I would eat a bunch of sweets. Some days I didn't eat. I had just like a salad. Some days I would have like a whole bottle of soda. So it was all over the place. It was disorganized. So I learned a lot about myself and how my emotions affected me. during that month. So that was one objective. I felt really good because I broke it down into something that was easy to accomplish, which was I just kept track on my journal, and then then at the end of the month I looked at it and I kind of came up with quite a bit of education about myself in that time. Another objective that I put for myself was once I finished with that month, I another objective was I needed to work on my cognitive health. So I got rid of the main social media um, platform that I used was TikTok. And I was really, really, really hooked on it. So I realized this is really not building me up. It's not really doing much for me. And I feel like I'll just sit there for like 5 hours and do nothing. And it was actually causing me headaches and I wasn't feeling very good afterwards. So and I wasn't being very productive. So I deleted that and I downloaded on my phone instead brain healthy and brain stimulating kinds of games. And I really like the games anyways, they're entertaining. Um, but uh, I knew that I had to make the switch. So I also switched to like listening to audiobooks and podcasts and things like that to kind of fill in my free time. And after a week or so, I was happy to switch. Getting off of TikTok wasn't that horrible. I was able to do it, and I felt really, really, really good. I can say that now, lately, for like the last few weeks, I've been finding myself more and more attracted to like YouTube and the shorts on YouTube, which right back to that old habit. And so I've been like cranking up again on like listening to my podcast and listening to my books. And the next step is going back to like making sure that I'm replacing the YouTube with shorts with my cognitive games. But every objective that I set for myself, I made sure that it was very flexible. I made sure if I messed up in the sense of, okay, I set an objective, I didn't quite make it through. Let's say that I set the objective for like a week and it didn't work. I didn't accomplish it. I didn't finish the task. I would cut it back. If I accomplished it but it was too hard, I reduced this. So it was very flexible. I worked within my comfort and I really focused on working on one objective at a time because I understood that the process that I'm facing is a lifelong unlearning of a lot of negative patterns, a lot of negative relationships with food and with behaviors and stuff like that. So I had to be really honest with myself about, okay, so you're comfortable with this, you're not comfortable with that, or you can accomplish this or you can't that. So every objective individually had its own little tiny list of objectives and broken down into tiny, tiny, tiny morsels that I could get through. The the process took time. It took a year, and I'm still in the process, as a matter of fact. And I had to come to terms with the understanding that I I'm not really ever going to stop this process. Um, my goal is to be the healthiest person I possibly can. Every year, my body changes. Every day, my body's changing. So I know that this is a goal that I will forever pursue, and I have to be realistic with myself about it. And I actually don't have a problem with that. But some people might. So you got to be honest with yourself. Then the next thing about objectives is that, you know, aside from being honest with yourself about them, aside from making them realistic to you, and aside from them being small and measurable, you want to understand how rewarding yourself for completing objectives should ideally work. So a lot of people, they finish their objective, yay, I didn't eat anything that was high in sugar or fructose, and my carbs were under my limit, blah blah blah. for a whole week. Yeah, I feel awesome. This is great. Let me reward myself with a cheat day. The worst thing that you can do to accomplish your goal is to stimulate and reward your brain with something that is counterproductive to the goal. The reason for that is because the word goal already makes people cringe, already off the bat. So we already have negative relationships with that word in the first place. The word's objective, you may not cringe from it, but it's close enough. But the word reward, your brain understands as a good thing. So if any time that you reward yourself, you're rewarding yourself with something that goes against your goal, you're essentially telling your brain, hey, just so you know, this thing that hurts your goal or that hurts you and your process is a good thing. And this thing that helps your process, like an objective, or that is the final goal, is a bad thing. Counterproductive. So anytime you reward yourself, try to reward yourself with something that's either going to build onto the goal and actually push you towards the goal, or that at least it's just neutral. It's not going to have anything to do with your goal or your objectives, and it's not going to hurt it. So for example, for me, I would reward myself with I would go to the gym, and people would be like, what the heck, that's not a reward. But to me, it was a reward because I would go to the gym and it wasn't about working out. I would go to the gym and have one of my favorite classes, which was like a yoga class or like a Zumba class. So I would go to the gym and actually dance instead of like doing the weights and doing the cardio and stuff like that. So that was a reward for me. I would also try to have experiences as reward instead of food. And it was also really good for my mental health and stuff like that. So try to find things to reward yourself, which is great, but that do not go counter to your ultimate goal, because you don't want to keep reinforcing the idea that you're completing a chore or completing something that's like just cringe, rather than, no, this is something that I'm looking forward to and I made the decision and I'm excited about. Now let's talk about obstacles. Some of the obstacles that you're going to find, and these are not absolutely everything, but these are the ones that I see the most often when I work with patients and in my own experience as well. You have pre-set patterns of behavior. So we're talking about throughout your life, you learn to do things a certain way. You learn to eat a certain way. You learn to brush your teeth a certain way. You learn to sleep in a certain position. You learn to behave a certain way. When you start to set your goals and you pursue your objectives, there's a very good chance that you're going to be going completely against your old habits. And the reason is because if your old habits were working great, you wouldn't be needing to set goals to begin with. Let's be real. So understand that your old habits are going to try to come up and try to assert themselves against what you're trying to do. So there's a lot of unlearning that you're going to be doing along the way. So that's why you have to be very patient with yourself and very aware of what your patterns are. So try to educate yourself and observe yourself as much as you can on what are your behaviors, what are your patterns, what are the things that you're used to doing that you know are counterproductive to what you're trying to accomplish. Another thing is, obviously, past trauma. That's a big one. So trauma in the sense of, childhood trauma, sexual trauma, childhood abandonment, attachment trauma, things like that. Whenever we start to work on ourselves and really build on ourselves, there's something amazing that happens to us. Our brains really embrace it in the sense that sort of seems to understand that, like, hey, this person's finally ready to start processing some difficult things. And so you're going to find yourself face to face with certain memories and thoughts that maybe you thought were long gone, and are popping up in your process because they have not been resolved, and your brain is feeling like for you to be able to move on to the end of this objective, or for you to accomplish your goal, you need to deal with this. And so it starts to send you signals in the sense of your mood shifts. You start to have flashbacks. You start to have memories. You start to your behavior changes. You get angry for things that maybe you're not aware of, or you don't understand why you're getting angry. Obviously, nightmares, difficulty sleeping, increasing anxiety, increasing depression, things like that. Understand how valuable it is for you to reach out to resources as much as possible. And I'm talking about resources across the board. Like for me, I started out learning from a physical trainer. I also got a chiropractor. I also started to listen to a lot of podcasts from famous neurologists. I then moved on to learning from my partner, who has a long history of physical training, and just he's very capable when it comes to just taking care of his body, and he knows a lot about it, and physiological information that he can give me. So those are resources, and you need to surround yourself with resources. Another thing is, talking to other mental health colleagues and reaching out for help. So for you, it would be, talking to you if you have a therapist or a life coach, or people that you trust enough that you feel they would have an objective view and be very supportive and things like that. But don't be afraid to look for help and support from your peers and from people in your life that have your best interest in mind. Because a lot of skeletons are going to be coming out of the closet when you start to heal and when you start to progress towards your goal. And that can be a major obstacle. The next thing, talking about people, is toxic people. It doesn't really make a difference. It can be family members, it can be friends, it can be colleagues, it can be strangers on the street. But there's something about growth, and there's something about learning to improve yourself and to love yourself that usually will set off certain behaviors in others around you. We train the people in our lives to treat us a certain way. So if you've been basically the doormat of the family for the last 30 years or so of your life, and now you start to say, well, my goal is to be a more assertive person, and part of my objectives are that I am going to start using my voice to say no more often, or to set boundaries. You've trained these people to treat you a certain way. You've trained these people to treat you, to talk to you a certain way, to behave a certain way around you. So when they see that you're changing, you're going to get a lot of pushback. You're going to get rejection. And that may be enough for you to stop, and you may not pursue your goal. That's why it's so important for your goal to be so personal, for you to have such a personal relationship with your goal, that there's no one or nothing that can persuade you to stop. That's how you can accomplish it, because you are going to get people in your life that are not going to be supportive. Just a quick personal story for myself. For example, I decided to be a vegetarian for a few years, and I come from a Cuban household. I was born Cuban, my whole family is Cuban. So we're big into eating meat, like somebody laughs at a good joke, that's a good enough excuse to kill a pig and like roast, and do a big roast and put on salsa and have the music and have a party. So you don't need a whole lot to persuade a Cuban person to enjoy, a good pork or steak or whatever. And I never realized how much that was going to affect my family, because my decision made my family so, so, so very uncomfortable that they would actually try to sabotage me. They would put meat inside my beans, inside my beans. They would try to sneak it in, and say that it was a vegetable, or say that it was mushrooms or whatever. Pretty sure my family, well, no, my dad used to cook with mushrooms occasionally, but he was the only one that dared to go that far. But they would tell me, like, we have food, but not the kind of food that you're gonna be okay with. So like they would give me a hard time, because they were just so uncomfortable with the idea of me being a vegetarian. So know and understand that there's going to be people in your life that, even though those people have your absolute best interest in mind, it's hard for people to get comfortable with other people's change. It's hard for people to get comfortable with their own change, but it happens. And so it can be a big challenge, and a big obstacle for the process. So you're going to learn about setting boundaries along the way. I can definitely tell you that much. Another thing about, obstacles is environmental obstacles. Are you a single parent? Are you a busy student? Are you on a budget? Do you have your own business and you work 80 hours a week? Guilty as charged. Like, what are the things, that are going to keep you from being able to, like, meal plan, and being able to take the time to actually go to the grocery store and get healthy snacks, and, or are you the type of person that eats 90% of your meals in the car and, like, just needs something that you can grab with your hand and, like, while you're steering, so that is also a big obstacle. Is like, your environment. Is your environment conducive to actually changing, or is it more of an obstacle? And just understand those things. And the final thing is, of course, your mindset. That makes such a huge difference. Your mindset is the biggest thing. It can be your biggest supporter or your biggest obstacle. And understanding where your mind is at when it comes to this goal. And every time that you don't meet an objective, what are you telling yourself inside your head? Are you telling yourself that you're a failure? Are you telling yourself that you're never going to accomplish this? Or can you recognize that you are your own biggest supporter and your own biggest resource and your own biggest cheerleader, and that your voice makes a huge impact on your actions, your internal language? If you call a goal an obstacle, or if you call it an opportunity, if you are learning lessons and you're saying this is too hard, or if you're saying, damn, I'm growing, this is amazing, I've never grown so fast and so hard in my life, it makes a huge difference. The words that you say to yourself, you can be your biggest obstacle or your biggest advantage and your biggest resource. So keeping that in mind makes a huge difference. Wrapping it up for today, obviously, as a mental health provider, I support wholeheartedly having a strong mental health team on your side. But more importantly, making sure that you surround yourself with positive people and people that empower you, and making sure that you surround yourself in here with positive thoughts. And it doesn't have to be all like, rainbows and butterflies, but at least be realistic with yourself. Don't tear yourself down. A lot of people say that they're realistic, but they're really just cynical. they start to tear themselves down with this excuse of like, well, I'm just honest with myself, or I'm just realistic. It's not realist. That's not a realist. That's a cynic. At least be honest and stick to the facts. If you can't be positive, at least stick to the facts. Not everything is as bad as your imagination sets it, or your mind sets it. Not you didn't really fail as bad as you think that you did. Take a step back, take a breath, let your emotions kind of calm down a little bit, and then reassess the situation and get back out there. And don't give up. If you really feel passionate about that goal, don't give up. Find reasons to keep the fire going. And that's my suggestion for this episode. And I hope that it helped you. And I hope that your journey is one of a lot of growth and a lot of positivity. And we'll be seeing each other again very soon in the next episode, I hope. If you like the messages that we're sharing in this episode, and if you want to follow along with us, click the little subscribe button. If you want to get notifications, the little bell. And we'll be seeing you in the next episode. And we really appreciate you.